I wasn't looking for anything when I walked into that cafe. Just another job site, another contract, another set of specs to measure twice and cut once. My name's Miles Carter, 44, general contractor, and halfway through the act of rebuilding my life after a divorce that left more than just a dent. I've got a teenage daughter, Jessa, who spends most of her time at her mother's house, reminding me with every short text and occasional visit that time doesn't slow down for anyone. I build houses, decks, and storefronts, but my own life has felt half-finished for a long time. The cafe was tucked between a yoga studio and a florist shop, with a chalkboard sign out front that read, "Life happens. Coffee helps." Corny, but charming. Inside, the place smelled like vanilla syrup and ambition. That's where I met her, Rain Morgan. She was wiping down a counter with a dish towel that had seen better days, her hair in a messy bun, not in the romanticized Instagram way, but in the "I've been here since 6 a.m. and I'm still answering supplier emails" kind of way. She wore tired like it was stitched into her clothes, but not in a way that diminished her. It made her real. She looked up as I stepped in and gave me a nod, not a smile, not a greeting, just a nod, like we were already in the middle of something. I introduced myself, said I was here to check out the remodeling project, and she tossed me a binder of ideas without saying a word. That should have annoyed me, but it didn't. There was something magnetic about her presence, like a quiet force of nature that didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Over the next few days, we talked more. Slowly at first. She had this dry wit, sharp as a box cutter. Called the ceiling tiles corporate sadness. Referred to the espresso machine as her diva and stainless steel. I laughed more than I expected to, and she noticed. "You always laugh like it surprises you," she said once, pouring me a cup of something dark and bold. Like you forgot how. She wasn't wrong. I'd been coasting on quiet for too long. We started meeting after hours to go over design updates. She wanted reclaimed wood for the counter. I told her about this salvage yard I knew an hour out of town, and we ended up spending a whole Saturday digging through old planks and rusted nails. She wore boots that didn't match and sang along to Stevie Nicks like she meant every word. That day, I caught myself watching her, not in a lustful way, but in that dangerous space between admiration and hope. That maybe this was something. Then came the name, Silas Grant. We were back at the cafe, laying out floor samples when she mentioned him. "Silas says walnut's too dark for the room," she said offhandedly. I nodded, making a note. "Friend of yours?" She glanced up, hesitated. "Best friend since college." The kind of answer you file away for later. Over the next few weeks, his name popped up more. Silas said the lighting feels too sterile. Silas thinks I should go for open shelving. Silas has a thing about exposed brick. At first, I didn't care. People have friends. Opinions. It wasn't my place to challenge it. But then I noticed the way her tone changed when she said his name. Softer. Like muscle memory. One day, we were taking a break on the back steps of the cafe. She passed me a cold bottle of water, and I asked, casual as I could, "You and Silas ever date?" She didn't flinch. Just nodded, slow and deliberate. "Yeah, a long time ago. It didn't work out." Then she added, "But we're still close. He's family." That word again, family. A shield and a sword, depending on who's wielding it. I told myself I was fine with it. I'd been through worse. I wasn't the jealous type. But Silas didn't make it easy. He started showing up to the cafe more often. Always just when we were deep in conversation or laughing a little too hard. He never outright said anything rude, but there was this edge to him. Like he was always measuring me, trying to find the weak spot in the wall. He'd come in and make himself at home, leaning behind the counter like he worked there, tossing Rain a pastry from someplace they used to go to all the time. Rain would laugh, almost embarrassed, and I'd suddenly feel like a third wheel at my own job site. I hated how easily he inserted himself, how effortlessly she allowed it. I told myself not to overthink it, that what I had with Rain was building into something solid. She smiled at me differently than she did at anyone else. She texted me late at night just to say she couldn't sleep. When I mentioned missing Jessa, she listened, really listened. Not the kind of half-hearted nod people give when they're waiting for their turn to talk. But it was getting harder to ignore the way Silas hovered. Like he wasn't just a friend, but a permanent shadow over everything Rain touched. I started asking myself questions I didn't like. Was I just a placeholder until he decided to swoop back in? Did she even see how deep his roots still ran? One night, as I packed up my tools, Rain walked me out. The street was quiet, and the light above the cafe door flickered with a soft buzz. She reached out, her hand brushing mine. Thank you, she said. For everything. I wanted to say something meaningful. Instead, I asked, does he know you're seeing me? Her expression tightened just enough to confirm what I already feared. No, she said. It's complicated. I nodded. Yeah, I'm starting to see that. And just like that, what had felt like sparks and coffee turned into shadows and doubt. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I wasn't walking blind anymore. It was a warm Saturday evening, the kind that smelled like fresh-cut grass and smoke from a neighbor's grill. Rain had invited me to her place for dinner, a backyard get-together with what she called her inner circle. I'd offered to come early and help set up, maybe sneak in a quiet moment or two before the guests arrived. I had no idea I was walking into a test I didn't sign up for. The moment I stepped onto her back deck, I spotted him. Silas. Already there, leaning against the railing like he owned the place, beer in hand, laughing at something Rain said. She was barefoot, wearing a sundress that caught the last bit of sun, and he was standing so close their shoulders almost touched. That laugh she gave him, it wasn't romantic, it was nostalgic. But nostalgia has its own kind of intimacy, the kind you don't share if you're building something new with someone else. I raised my hand in a casual wave, masking the tension that surged through my chest. Hey, I said, keeping it light. Rain smiled warmly. Silas gave me a nod. No words, just a nod. Cold, clipped, and meant to put me in my place. Rain handed me a pair of tongs. You're on steak duty, she said with a wink. I forced a smile and headed to the grill, telling myself to focus on the moment, not the man circling it like a vulture. But the air was already off. It wasn't one big thing, it was 1,000 small ones. He hovered while I grilled, commented on my technique. You sure about that, Tim? Rain likes hers medium rare, not medium. Then later, that cut's tricky, you might dry it out. Each remark delivered with a smirk and a sip of his beer. I kept my cool. I'd been on job sites where grown men threw punches over roofing material. I wasn't about to let a smug ex push me into something I'd regret. When the guests arrived, I played host right alongside Rain. I handed out drinks, made small talk, even got a few laughs from her friend Becca, who told me I was refreshingly normal. Rain's hand brushed my back once, and I thought, maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe Silas is just awkward. Then the conversation shifted. We were all seated around the table on the deck, plates full, wine poured, music humming low in the background. Someone brought up politics. I can't even remember who. Just a passing comment about the economy or the mayor or something. I chimed in with my usual honest but measured. I'm not the type to bulldoze a dinner party with opinions. But Silas seized it like bait. That's not entirely accurate, he said. Actually, if you read the legislation. I tried to clarify my point, calmly. But he cut in again. You're oversimplifying it, Miles. There's a lot you're missing. I glanced at Rain. She looked down at her plate, chewing slowly. No sign she was going to step in. I kept my voice even. I'm not claiming to be an expert. Just giving my take on it. Silas leaned forward, eyes sharp. Yeah, but your take's misinformed. Rain, back me up here. It was the first time he directly invoked her name like that, dragging her into the tension. She looked caught, like a deer frozen between headlights. I think you're both just looking at it differently, she said, trying to play neutral. But her eyes flicked toward him, not me. That was the shift. The exact second I realized I wasn't debating ideas anymore. I was being tested. Silas wasn't looking for truth. He was asserting dominance. And she was letting him. He leaned back, scoffing. You don't even know what you're talking about. Rain's just too nice to say it out loud. The words hit like a hammer. I looked around the table. The laughter had died. Becca was frowning. One of the guys, Toby, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I glanced at Rain again, expecting, hoping she'd speak up. Say something. Anything. She didn't. I swallowed the heat rising in my throat and set down my fork. You don't have to agree with me, Silas. But the condescension's not necessary. He laughed. It's not condescension if it's true. That's when Rain finally stood up. Okay, let's just cool it, all right? Her voice was tight, performative. She looked at the group. Sorry, everyone. It's just a spirited discussion. Silas stood too. No, it's fine. I don't need to be lectured on my own deck. It's not your deck, I said, low but clear. He turned to Rain. You gonna let him talk to me like that? Her silence was answer enough. He scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and walked off. The screen door slammed behind him. Everyone sat there, stunned. No one spoke. Becca mumbled something about needing to call a sitter, and the others started making excuses to leave. Within 10 minutes, the dinner Rain had so carefully planned was just us. Leftovers, uneaten cake, and the buzz of a porch light. She pulled me aside near the kitchen. Her eyes were glassy, voice shaky. "You need to apologize to him." I blinked. "Excuse me. He was here before you. He's family. And he's more important than you." There it was. A clean, brutal sentence. No stutters. No second guessing. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even ask her to take it back. I just looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I saw what had been there all along. I was the visitor. He was the foundation. She turned away, probably expecting me to fight for my place. But I'd already decided, if I had to fight for it, I didn't have one. I didn't slam the door. Didn't raise my voice. Just walked down the front steps of Rain's house and toward my truck like I was leaving any other gathering. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was weight. Like someone had draped a soaked tarp over my chest, and with every breath, it sagged lower. Her words echoed with perfect clarity as I climbed into the cab and shut the door. "He was here before you, and he's more important than you." I sat there for a moment, the engine off, hands on the steering wheel. The porch light behind me flickered once, then steadied. I could still hear the faint creak of her screen door as it settled closed. She didn't come after me. I didn't expect her to. I started the truck and backed out slow, gravel crunching beneath my tires, the sound louder than it should have been in the quiet street. No music. No calls. I didn't even glance at my phone. I needed something I could control. So I drove. Past the school Jessie used to go to when she was little. Past the hardware store I once helped rebuild after a storm. Past the 24-hour diner with the burnt coffee and sticky booths. I didn't have a destination in mind. Sometimes movement is enough. My dad used to say that when the answers don't come, get your hands busy. Let the body outrun the mind. That night, driving became my version of that. Mile after mile, headlights carving through the dark, I let silence stretch out and do its work. I thought about Jessa. About how she used to ask me questions that split me in half. Like, "Why don't you live with mommy anymore?" Or, "Did you stop loving her?" I'd always answer carefully. Because kids don't need all the pieces, they just need to know they're not one of the ones that got dropped. I never talked badly about her mother. But now I wondered what Jessa would think if she saw me like this. Saw the man who'd promised never to be a doormat again, quietly walking away from a woman who didn't choose him. I ended up at the job site on 3rd Street. A half-finished deck sat like a skeleton frame under the moonlight, fresh beams already graying at the edges. I climbed out of the truck and walked across the plywood, boots thudding against the boards. I sat on a beam with my feet dangling over the edge, staring at the structure like it could tell me something I hadn't figured out yet. In my last marriage, I stayed too long. I kept hoping love would grow back like hair after a bad cut. That if I worked harder, provided better, stayed patient, the silence would fill with warmth again. But it didn't. It just got quieter and colder. And eventually, I realized I was alone in a house built for two. That moment, when I packed my tools, signed the papers, split holidays with Jessa, it taught me something painful. When someone shows you your rank in their life, don't ask for a recount. And yet here I was again. Not yelling, not fighting, just leaving. I slept in the truck that night, reclining the seat back and pulling my jacket over me like a blanket. It wasn't comfortable, but it was mine. The next morning, I got up, walked to the corner diner, and ordered eggs and toast like it was any other workday. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had 6 messages from Rain. The first was casual. "Hey, can we talk?" Then came the defense. "You took that the wrong way." I didn't mean it how it sounded. Then the guilt. I needed you to understand how long Silas has been in my life. Then silence. By day 2, she tried again. "I hate how we left things. I miss you." I didn't respond. It wasn't about punishment. I wasn't trying to teach her a lesson. I just needed space. Real space. The kind where I could hear my own thoughts without hers echoing over every one of them. So I threw myself into work. Leveled floors. Sanded drywall. Installed crown molding so precisely it looked like it had grown there. There's something beautiful about craftsmanship when your hands create something solid, measurable, true. Unlike feelings, unlike relationships, unlike words that can be rearranged and denied. Wood doesn't lie. It fits or it doesn't. Each night, I came home to my quiet apartment. No music. No laughter. No half-used bottles of wine in the fridge. Just me in the silence. At first, it felt hollow. Then it started to feel honest. On the fourth night, I opened her last message. It read, "I'm sorry. I know you need time, but please don't disappear without giving us a chance to fix this. I care about you, Miles. I really do. Maybe I didn't say it right, but I need you to know I didn't mean to hurt you." I stared at those words for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I even typed something once, then deleted it. It wasn't about her words anymore. It was about mine. Because somewhere along the line, I'd made myself smaller to avoid conflict. Let things slide because I wanted the story to work out. I'd hoped that if I just gave her time, she'd see me the way I saw her. But that night at the dinner, when she looked at him and not at me, when she said he mattered more, without flinching, that wasn't a mistake. That was her truth. And now, I had to decide what mine was. I heard the knock before I saw her. 3 soft taps. Then a pause. Then one more, like she wasn't sure if she should follow through. I was sitting on the floor of my living room, legs stretched out, half a sandwich in my hand that I wasn't hungry enough to finish. It was a Thursday night, and the rain had started maybe an hour before, tapping on the windows like a metronome. I didn't move at first. I knew who it was. Sometimes, silence tells you more than any ringtone ever could. Another knock. Quieter this time. Hesitant. I stood, wiped my hands on my jeans, and opened the door. There she was. Rain. Her hair was soaked at the edges, curls clinging to her neck. Her eyes were swollen, red-rimmed. No umbrella. No pretense. Just her, in a hoodie too thin for the weather and a vulnerability I hadn't seen before, not even that night on the deck when she chose Silas. She didn't say anything at first. Her lips parted, but whatever she meant to say got caught in her throat. I just stepped aside and let her in. She crossed the threshold like someone entering a confessional. Her shoes left wet marks on the hardwood. I shut the door gently behind her. She turned to face me, still shaking slightly, not from the cold, I realized, but from whatever storm had hit her long before she stepped out into the rain. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "You always had somewhere," I said. "You just never chose it." She flinched like I'd slapped her, and I immediately hated myself for saying it like that. But I didn't take it back. I couldn't. She reached up, wiped her face with her sleeve. "I messed up, Miles. I know I did." I motioned toward the couch. She sat down slowly, carefully, as though afraid the furniture might reject her too. "I came because I needed to say it in person. Not a text. Not some carefully typed apology that makes me sound more put together than I actually am." She looked at me with glassy eyes. "You didn't deserve what I said. Not that night. Not ever." I sat in the armchair across from her, my hands clasped tightly. "But you did say it, Rain. That's what I keep coming back to. You said it like it was fact." "I know." Her voice cracked. "And that's the part that eats at me." We sat there in silence for a beat. The rain outside had picked up, tapping more insistently against the windows. "I didn't mean it," she said finally. "I swear to you, I didn't mean it." "But you did," I replied, voice even. "That's why it hurts so much. You didn't stutter. You didn't hesitate. You told me exactly where I stood. Second place." She nodded, eyes dropping to her hands. "You're right." I said it because in that moment, I panicked. I saw Silas storm off and I reverted. It's what I've always done with him. Keep the peace. Say what keeps him from blowing up, even if it costs someone else. "I know." Her voice broke completely then, and she buried her face in her hands. I hate that about myself. I watched her crumble in front of me, part of me wanting to go to her, the other part gripping the chair like it would float me away from the wreckage. When she finally looked up, her makeup had smudged beneath her eyes. "He's been in my life so long, Miles. Since college. Every breakup I've ever had, he was there, offering advice, planting doubts. I thought he was protecting me, but now I see it wasn't protection. It was control." I stayed quiet. I wanted to give her space to dig her way out, not toss her a ladder just yet. "He's done this before," she went on. "To other men. To me. My sister warned me. Becca too. But I defended him. Every time." I nodded slowly. "And the night of the dinner?" She looked ashamed. "I was so afraid of losing control of the situation, I tried to manage everyone instead of being honest with anyone, including you. I panicked when I saw you standing your ground. Not because you were wrong, but because I'd never seen someone not bend for him. There it was. The real issue. Not just Silas. Not just her words. But the way I threatened the order of things she'd always known." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I don't hate you, Rain, but I can't go back to being the guy who waits in the wings while you figure out where I fit. You're not, she said quickly. You never were. I just didn't see how much space I'd let Silas take up in my head until you walked away. And the silence that followed, it made me listen to the noise I'd gotten too used to. I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw it. Something had cracked open in her. Something that hadn't been there before. Not regret. Not desperation. But truth. I'm not asking to fix everything tonight, she said. I just want to start again. With honesty. Even if it means starting over. I didn't answer right away. I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water. When I came back, I handed her one and sat again. I need space, I said. Not to punish you, but because I need to be sure I'm not stepping back into something that's still shaped like someone else. She nodded. I can respect that. We sat in the quiet for a while, just sipping water and listening to the rain. No promises. No kisses. Just the faint hope that maybe, not now, not yet, but maybe, there was still something worth rebuilding. Something on level ground. It had been 3 days since Rain showed up at my door, and I hadn't heard from her since. I didn't expect to. She meant what she said, space. Real space. The kind of silence that can either settle things or expose the cracks too deep to patch. I've been filling the time with work, as usual. Fixing a sagging porch in Oak Ridge, framing out a sunroom in East Hollow, staying out later than usual so I didn't have to sit in my own apartment staring at empty chairs. On a late afternoon, just as I was packing up my tools into the truck, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated. Unknown numbers rarely bring anything good, but something nudged me to answer. Hello, is this Miles Carter? The voice was sharp but familiar, like someone who knew how to command attention without raising her volume. Yes. Speaking. It's Bryn, Rain's sister. That stopped me in my tracks. I'd only met Bryn once, briefly, during one of the early cafe meetings. She'd come in for coffee, offered a polite hello, and left with a look that I couldn't read at the time. Now, that unreadable look suddenly had a voice. I hope it's okay, I got your number from Rain's phone. I didn't ask her, I just needed to talk to you. I leaned against the open tailgate of my truck. All right, go ahead. She sighed on the other end, not the kind of sigh that signaled fatigue, but the kind you give right before stepping on a live wire. I just wanted to say I saw what happened. Not the whole thing, but enough. And I think you handled it better than anyone else ever has. Handled what? Silas, she said bluntly. That toxic parasite. I blinked. Well, that's not exactly the family-friendly title he goes by. She laughed bitterly. Oh, don't worry, he doesn't like me much. I stopped worshiping him when I was 15. Rain never quite got there. There was a pause, heavy and charged. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because you stood up to him. At that dinner. No one's ever done that. Not her ex-husband, not her old boyfriends, not even my parents. Silas always finds a way to twist things until he's the misunderstood hero. But you? You didn't play his game. And I wanted to tell you, I saw that. I swallowed hard, not sure what to say to that. Praise wasn't something I sought, especially not for something that came at the cost of a relationship. He's always been like this, she continued. Possessive. Territorial. But he's smart. He does it under the radar. Plays the caring friend. The devoted protector. But really, he undermines everyone Rain gets close to. Plants little seeds. Makes her question them. Then pulls away just enough to make her feel like he's the only constant. And she doesn't see it? I asked, more to myself than to her. She doesn't want to. That's the difference. Rain believes loyalty is owed if it's old enough. She thinks time equals truth. She confuses longevity with love. I let those words sink in, because they were exactly what I hadn't been able to articulate myself. Rain didn't love Silas, not romantically, but she'd let him root so deeply into her life that she didn't question his weight on her choices. Bryn continued. You know her ex-husband? Silas told him things Rain had confided during hard times. Told him she was confused, that maybe she wasn't ready for the kind of life he wanted. The man filed for separation a month later. Rain never even suspected the connection. My jaw clenched. And she still trusts him after that? She doesn't know. I only found out later from a mutual friend. But when I tried to tell her, she shut down. Said I was being dramatic. Said Silas would never do that. That tracks, I muttered. He's got a way of making you feel like you're the irrational one. Exactly, Bryn said. But the thing is, Miles, she's trying now. I know her. I've never seen her this raw, this honest. The version of her that came home after your fight? That was someone waking up. I looked out across the lot where my truck was parked. The sun was sinking low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the dirt. The world felt quiet, except for Bryn's voice echoing in my ear. "She's not perfect," Bryn added, "but she's not blind anymore either. And that's because of you." I exhaled slowly. "So what are you asking me, Bryn?" "Nothing," she said. "Just don't write her off because of him. She didn't just lose you that night. She lost her safety net. And maybe, for the first time, she's realizing she never needed it to begin with." I didn't respond right away. There was a part of me that wanted to hang on to the anger, to the clarity that came from feeling wronged. But the other part, the part that watched rain cry in my apartment, the part that remembered how she'd once looked at me like I was more than just a man with a hammer and a guarded heart, that part was listening. "Thanks for calling," I said finally. "She'll probably be mad when she finds out," Bryn said with a dry laugh. "Let her be," I replied. "Truth doesn't need permission." After we hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't check my messages. Just sat there with the weight of everything Bryn had said. And for the first time since that night on the deck, I didn't feel like the outsider anymore. I felt like someone who had seen the rot beneath the frame. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the one who needed fixing. The text came in at 8:03 a.m. on a Wednesday. "Can we talk? Neutral place. Please." I stared at it for a full minute before responding. "Where?" She suggested the park, Linden Row, the one with the stone bridge and iron benches no one ever sat on because they were always just a little too cold, a little too damp. It wasn't far from the cafe, but it was quiet, secluded. Probably her idea of neutral. I arrived 5 minutes early. Rain was already there, seated on the edge of the fountain, her hands clasped between her knees. She looked smaller somehow, like something had folded inward. No makeup, no dramatic clothes. Just a navy windbreaker, jeans, and that same tired beauty I'd noticed the first time we met, only this time, it wasn't worn. It was raw. I walked up slowly. She looked up and gave me a tight, uncertain smile. "Thanks for coming." I nodded but didn't sit right away. "So?" She took a breath, then another. "I started therapy." That caught me off guard. "It's been 2 weeks. I should have told you, but I wanted to be sure I'd actually follow through before I made it a headline." Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. But her eyes were different. Clearer. Not polished. Not placating. Just honest. "That's good," I said, still standing. "I'm glad you're doing something for yourself." "I didn't go for Silas," she added quickly. "I went because I needed to understand why I let him keep pulling the strings. Why I kept defending him even when I knew it was wrong." She motioned for me to sit, and this time I did. The cold from the stone seeped through my jeans almost instantly. We sat side by side, a careful foot of space between us. "I read back through his texts," she said, pulling out her phone. "I never really paid attention before. But once I did, I saw it. The guilt tripping. The manipulation. How every message circled back to me owing him something: time, loyalty, silence." She scrolled for a second, then held up the screen to show me. "I can't believe you're letting someone come between us after all these years. You've changed. Not in a good way. You think he'll stay when things get hard? Newsflash, he won't." I read them, then looked at her. "He said that." She nodded, her throat tight. Every time I pulled away even a little, he doubled down. "The night of the dinner, he sent one right before you got there." She showed me. "Don't let him run the show. Remember who was there when your life fell apart." My stomach turned. "Jesus. He knew what he was doing," she whispered. "I think he always did." "And you didn't see it?" "I saw pieces of it. But I kept convincing myself it was love. Just the wrong kind." I leaned back, the bench pressing into my shoulders. "So why tell me all this now?" She turned to face me fully, the wind catching her hair and pushing it across her face. "Because I need you to know I'm not defending him anymore. And I'm not here asking for you to come back or forgive me. I'm here because I need to own what I let happen. I let him sabotage what we had. I let him manipulate my decisions. And I hurt you because I was still living by his rules." I looked away for a moment, watching a kid toss breadcrumbs to a flock of pigeons. The sound of traffic buzzed in the distance, low and constant like a bad memory you can't quite forget. "So where do you go from here?" I asked. "I cut him off," she said. "Blocked his number. Told him not to come to the cafe. Told Becca and Bryn and everyone in between that I'm done making excuses for him." I raised a brow. "And how'd he take that?" Her smile was brittle, like a man who's never heard no before. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. I've been writing things down. For therapy. Letters I won't send. Memories I'm trying to sort. I wrote one about you. I didn't reach for it. I wasn't ready. Not for you to read, she added. Just to tell you that you mattered. That what we had, what we might still have, it meant something to me, even if I treated it like it didn't. My throat tightened. I rubbed my palms against my jeans, grounding myself. So what now? She shrugged. Now I keep going. I keep showing up to therapy. I keep being honest. Even when it's ugly. Even when I want to deflect or blame or fix someone else instead of fixing myself. And me? I asked carefully. Where do I fit in all of that? She looked at me, steady and sure. Wherever you want to. I'm not here to convince you to forgive me. I'm not offering promises I can't keep. But if you ever want to talk again, really talk. Not as boyfriend and girlfriend, not even as friends, just as two people who care, then I'll be here. No pressure. No expectations. I stared at her for a long moment. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It was spacious. Honest. I'll think about it, I said. That's all I ask. She stood, slung her bag over her shoulder. Thank you for listening. Then she turned and walked away, not looking back. And for the first time since this mess began, I felt something loosen inside me. Not closure, but the start of something better than that. Clarity. It was a Tuesday night when I got the call. I was in my shop, tinkering with a broken cabinet hinge that didn't need fixing but gave my hands something to do. The sawdust in the air had started to settle, and the world was quiet in that way it only gets when no one expects anything from you. Then my phone rang, and her name lit up the screen. Rain. I hesitated for a full 3 rings before answering. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Her words rushed out like they'd been waiting at the door too long. Miles, he showed up at my place. I straightened. What? Silas. He was drunk. Angry. He just showed up, yelling, banging on the door. I called the cops. My body moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed my keys. Are you okay? I'm shaken. But yes. I didn't let him in. He screamed for 5 minutes straight and then started kicking the mailbox. He's gone now. They took a report, but I'm filing for a restraining order. I stopped moving. That wasn't just a boundary. That was a wall. That was her drawing a line where there'd never been one before. I wanted to tell you myself. Before you heard it from someone else. I'm on my way. Miles. I'm not coming to fix anything, I said, quietly. I'm coming to stand by you. If you want me there. She didn't answer with words. Just a breath. A soft sound that said yes. When I got there, the front door had a new crack in the frame where he'd kicked it. A flower pot was shattered on the steps. Rain stood in a sweatshirt and leggings, arms wrapped around herself, eyes puffy but focused. She didn't cry when she saw me. She didn't collapse into my arms. She just opened the door and let me in. We sat on the couch in silence for a long time. She clutched a warm mug of tea like it was her only anchor to the present. You did the right thing, I said finally. She nodded. I wasn't sure if I was overreacting. Part of me still thought maybe I provoked him. I looked her in the eye. That's not your guilt to carry. She blinked fast, like she was fighting the instinct to make excuses for him. It's strange. I used to think I owed him. For being there when things were hard. For sticking around when others left. You don't owe someone your peace just because they stayed long enough to poison it. She smiled, barely. My therapist said something similar. She called it emotional entrapment. Like being in a house where the fire alarm goes off constantly, and eventually, you stop noticing the smoke. And tonight? I asked. Tonight I saw the flames. She told me about the texts that escalated in the last week. How he accused her of abandoning him, betraying their history, being manipulated by me. She said he'd called 27 times in one night. Left voicemails, some pleading, others full of venom. He said he needed me, that he was nothing without me. Then 2 messages later, he said I'd ruined him, and he hoped I was proud. Classic abuser pattern, love bombing to rage, back to guilt. I'd seen it before, in people I'd worked with, even in my own marriage once things started going south. I started reconnecting with friends I'd pulled away from, she said. Old friends. People Silas always had a reason to dislike. And I realized every one of them had a version of the same warning. They just stopped saying it when I wouldn't hear it. Sounds like he made himself the filter for your entire life. She nodded. Not anymore. We talked until midnight. Nothing heavy. Just little things. How work was going. The smell of her neighbor's terrible cooking. The plant she kept forgetting to water that somehow wouldn't die. The kind of conversation you have when you're trying to reclaim something normal. I didn't stay the night. I didn't even kiss her when I left. I just held her for a while on the porch. And she whispered, "Thank you for not making this about us." "This isn't about us," I said. "This is about you, learning to live without him in your head." In the days that followed, she changed in ways that didn't require declarations. She cut off shared passwords, changed locks, deleted old voicemails, reached out to her sister and Becca and apologized for all the years she defended him. She showed up for therapy even on days she didn't want to talk. She stopped blaming herself, and she didn't ask me to come back. That mattered most, because it meant she wasn't trying to fill the void he left with me. Her world started widening. I saw her laugh again, freely. I saw her at the cafe, talking to a new employee without worrying what Silas would think. I heard her talk about the future without factoring him in. And each time, I felt a quiet pride. Not because she was healing for me, but because she was healing for herself. We didn't rush back into anything. I kept my distance, not emotionally, but physically. I wanted her to have space to grow without me hovering. I answered when she called, showed up when she asked, but I didn't press. I didn't probe. One afternoon, she texted me a photo of a bookshelf she'd built herself, crooked but solid. The caption read, "Didn't wait for a man this time. Feels good." And it did. For both of us. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. Not just in her, but in me. I didn't feel like I was fighting for room in her life anymore. I wasn't a rival to a ghost. I wasn't a placeholder while she wrestled with someone else's grip. She was letting go. And for the first time, she was holding on to herself. We didn't jump back into it. There were no grand declarations. No candlelit dinners with whispered apologies. Rain and I approached each other like people approaching a house after a storm. Carefully, with eyes on the cracks, hearts guarded but curious. She was rebuilding her life on new terms, and I refused to be another shortcut to comfort. I wanted real. She needed real. Anything less would have just reset the cycle. We started slow. Coffee first, then walks. Sometimes at the cafe before opening, sometimes at the lake near her apartment. We talked, but not like lovers trying to mend something broken. More like people finally learning each other without pretense. I remember one morning in particular. We were sitting outside the cafe, sipping dark roast from mismatched mugs, the kind you only find in old diners or someone's second kitchen drawer. The sky was still half asleep, sun just cracking over the rooftops, and Rain looked over at me with something quiet in her expression. "I've been thinking about the difference between rebuilding and patching," she said. I nodded, waiting. In the past, I was always patching things, holding them together long enough to not deal with what was underneath. But patching doesn't last. It just hides the damage. And people are terrible at hiding damage. "You're not the only one," I said. I stayed married for 3 years after I should have left. Told myself I was fixing things, but all I was doing was repainting the rot. She smiled sadly. "You and me. A couple of professionals at Emotional Drywall." That morning, she invited me to a therapy session. Not because we were officially back together, but because, in her words, if we're going to try again, I want to know what I'm inviting you into, and I want you to know what you're inviting. It was a small office tucked above a bookstore, with lavender walls and the faint smell of chamomile tea. Her therapist, Dr. Hanley, greeted me with a handshake that was firm but not overbearing, like someone who'd learned to navigate trauma without needing to prove she could fix it. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "This isn't about blame. It's about clarity." I sat across from Rain, and for the first time, heard her speak about Silas without defense or distortion. "He was a foundation I never inspected," she said. "I built friendships, decisions, and relationships on top of him. And I didn't realize until recently that I was living in a structure that wasn't stable." Dr. Hanley nodded. "It's not uncommon, especially when someone positions themselves as irreplaceable. They make you question your instincts, make you believe your survival depends on their presence." I asked something that had been clawing at the back of my mind. "Was there ever a time you believed him more than you believed me?" Rain looked down. "Yes, but it wasn't about you. It was about how conditioned I was to default to his version of the story. You challenged that, and I didn't know how to hold two conflicting truths." She looked back up. "But I'm learning." I believed her, not because of the words, but because she wasn't trying to win me back with them. She wasn't reaching for me to fill a gap. She was standing on her own feet, with her own voice, in a room where she didn't owe me anything. That night, as we walked out into the warm spring air, she reached for my hand, not in desperation, but in invitation. We started dating again, not with fireworks or declarations. It was more like rediscovering a trail you once walked and seeing it with new eyes. We still had awkward pauses, still had days where her walls crept back up and I had to decide whether to press or give her space. But something had changed. She didn't shrink around me anymore, and I didn't feel like I had to carry both our weight just to stay close. One weekend, she invited me to help her rearrange her apartment. A symbolic fresh start, she called it. We moved the couch, replaced the rug she said Silas had picked out years ago, and hung up new shelves in the hallway. As I drilled into the plaster, she stood beside me, a level in one hand and a small notebook in the other. "What's that?" I asked. "My reminders," she said. "Things I've learned. Stuff I need to unlearn." She handed it to me. The first page read, 1. History is not currency. 2. Loyalty without boundaries is a trap. 3. Love doesn't have to hurt to be real. I handed it back carefully. "That's one hell of a blueprint. I figured you'd appreciate the structure," she said with a smirk. Even Becca, her friend from the cafe, pulled me aside one day to say, "She's lighter. It's not just you. She's freer." And it's the first time I've ever seen her actually choose someone without Silas hovering like a ghost in the corner. There was one night, late, when we sat on the balcony outside her bedroom. Just the two of us and the hum of the city beyond. "I want to earn this," Rain said. "Not assume it. I want to be worthy of the second chance you didn't know me." "You don't have to earn me," I said. "Just don't disappear into someone else again. That's all I ask." She rested her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was competing with a memory. She was here, with me, on level ground. The silence was different now. It wasn't the suffocating kind, the kind that used to stretch between Rain and me like a wire, taut and ready to snap. This silence was earned, comfortable. It followed laughter instead of replacing it. On most nights, we sat in it with cups of tea or shared playlists, each of us reading or scrolling or just breathing beside the other. No tension, no second-guessing. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the roof holds and the windows don't rattle anymore. It had been 3 months since the restraining order against Silas was filed. 2 since it expired. I won't lie, part of me waited for the other shoe to drop. A drive-by, a text, a casual run-in at the cafe, or one of the local bookstores he used to haunt. But nothing. Not a sighting. Not a whisper. Instead, the echo of him lingered in smaller ways. Mutual acquaintances with too much curiosity. Questions masked as concern. "Haven't seen Silas around lately. Everything okay with you two?" Or worse, "It's just weird not seeing him here." You two were like a package deal. Rain had stopped flinching when those comments came. She didn't get defensive or apologetic. She'd just nod and say, "That chapter's closed." Simple, clean, not cruel, but final. And when some people chose not to believe her, when they muttered things or distanced themselves, she let them. No begging, no proving. No mourning the ones who walked away. "I didn't lose friends," she told me one night while organizing boxes in her storage closet. "I lost people who were loyal to dysfunction. There's a difference." She was right. The more she grew into herself, the more I saw how much she'd been carrying. Not just the weight of Silas's influence, but the guilt of allowing it for so long. One night, while we were eating takeout from a Thai place down the block, she put her fork down mid-bite and said, "I used to think love was loud, that it had to come with drama or fire or some kind of grand gesture to count. But I was wrong. It's this. It's noodles and your knee brushing mine and me not needing to check my phone to feel secure." I smiled. "So, I shouldn't cancel the skywriting I booked." She laughed, really laughed, the kind that came from her belly now, not from a place trying to impress or distract. That sound had become one of my favorite things in the world. We didn't talk about Silas much anymore. Not out of avoidance, but because his absence had finally stopped being the most interesting thing in the room. Rain had filled that space with other things, her new hobbies, like painting watercolors she refused to show anyone, and hosting open mic poetry nights at the cafe. She started mentoring a younger woman who wanted to manage her own place one day, and she even brought her to one of our dinners at my place. The kind of dinner where we didn't worry about who was watching. Becca noticed the shift too. She pulled me aside after one of those open mic nights. "She's grounded," she said. "For the first time in years, she's choosing herself. Not history, not guilt, just what makes her feel alive." I nodded. "She's earning her quiet. And you?" Becca asked. You trust it now? I looked over at Rain, laughing with someone near the espresso machine, her eyes bright, her hands animated. Yeah, I said. For the first time, I do. Then came the night that sealed it. We were walking back from the market, bags of fresh basil, pasta, and a bottle of wine for a dinner we hadn't planned beyond something cozy. It was dusk, that golden hour where even the cracked sidewalks looked cinematic. Rain paused on the steps outside her building and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen before. Not nervous, not unsure, just clear. I don't want anyone else deciding how I love, she said. I blinked. What do you mean? She set the bags down and faced me fully. For so long, I let Silas define what was acceptable, what was loyal. I even let other people's opinions shape my relationships. I didn't realize how many choices I made out of fear of disappointing someone, of losing approval, of being alone. She reached out and touched my chest, right over the place my heart had learned to brace itself. But not this, she said. Not us. I choose you, Miles. Without noise. Without shadow. Just you. It wasn't the words that got me. It was the silence after. The way she didn't rush to explain or qualify or soften the truth. I stepped closer. You sure? She nodded. I'm done auditioning for people who only love me when I'm convenient. I wrapped my arms around her, and for once, I didn't feel like I was holding something fragile. I felt like I was holding someone steady. Someone who'd stopped leaning on old scaffolding and started standing on her own. Later that night, as we ate on her balcony, legs tangled beneath the blanket, she reached for my hand and said, "This is the kind of quiet I want for the rest of my life." And I knew then, this wasn't a rebound. It wasn't healing masquerading as romance. It was two people choosing each other not because they had to, but because they finally could. No more ghosts. No more noise. Just us. Choosing each other in the quiet. 6 months later, I no longer felt like I was waiting to be replaced. Rain and I had moved in together just after her lease expired, quietly, carefully, like people who had learned the value of slow steps. No grand announcement. No social media post with matching keys. Just a quiet Sunday morning with cardboard boxes, shared coffee, and the kind of laughter that comes when two people have survived something that once threatened to swallow them whole. She moved into my house, but we made it ours. We repainted the kitchen a pale green she'd picked out herself, and I didn't argue, even when I thought it looked like mint ice cream. We built a new bookshelf together, properly this time, level and straight, and she joked that it was symbolic of our growth. I told her she was reading too much into things. Then I kissed her. We argued sometimes, of course. No couple is immune. But now, there were no slammed doors. No withheld apologies. If we fought, we circled back. Talked. Listened. Grew. I didn't fear her silence anymore, and she no longer feared my disappointment. One evening, while folding laundry on our bed, she said, "You know what the difference is now?" I looked up. What? I don't brace myself when I hear your truck pull into the driveway. I don't rehearse lines in my head or wonder if I've done something wrong. I sat down beside her, a t-shirt still in my hands. And I don't feel like I'm tiptoeing around someone's unspoken rules. I'm not afraid of becoming invisible. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We're not trying to survive each other anymore. We're trying to build something. That's what it had become, a partnership. Balanced, honest. She didn't fold into me, and I didn't try to carry her. We walked side by side. When I struggled with a difficult project or worried about my daughter Jess's silence during her teenage moods, Rain listened, really listened. Not to solve, not to fix, but to understand. And when she had bad days, when the residue of old fears flared up, when the anxiety whispered that she still wasn't enough, I didn't minimize it. I didn't compare. I simply stayed, reminded her with actions that she was safe, that I wasn't going anywhere just because the air got heavy. Silas was truly gone now. Not just out of her phone, but out of her system. A few weeks after she moved in, he tried again, an email this time. A long, guilt-soaked message filled with nostalgia, passive-aggressive regret, and a list of everything they'd been through. She showed it to me without hesitation, her fingers trembling less from fear and more from the gravity of closure. "I don't even want to respond," she said. "Then don't," I told her. "He doesn't deserve your clarity." She blocked the address, deleted the thread, then looked at me with this quiet fire in her eyes and said, "I'm not afraid of him anymore. I'm just done." She meant it. I knew it then. The weight she used to carry like a second skin had finally slipped off. She made new friends. reconnected with old ones, started saying yes to things that once overwhelmed her, invites, small trips, uncomfortable conversations. Her confidence grew in the subtle ways that matter most: her posture, her voice, the way she looked people in the eye. Even Jessa noticed. "She's not like other women you've dated," my daughter said one afternoon after joining us for brunch. "No," I said, smiling. "She's not. She sees you." I nodded. "She does." Rain had become part of Jess's rhythm, too. Not a replacement for her mother, never that, but a steady presence. Someone who remembered her favorite tea and didn't force awkward conversations. Someone who asked how school was and actually remembered the answer. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, feel Rain's hand resting lightly on my chest, and just stare at the ceiling, amazed at how quiet the room felt. Not empty, not tense, just still. That kind of stillness takes work. It takes walking through fire and coming out willing to love without the armor. It takes choosing someone daily, not because you need to, but because you want to. On our 6-month living together mark, she surprised me with a small dinner on the back patio. Nothing fancy, just steaks, wine, and a few fairy lights strung from the railing. She wore a simple black dress, her hair tied back, barefoot like she always was at home. "You remember the first night you grilled here?" she asked. "Hard to forget," I said. Silas trying to micromanage the temperature. She winced playfully. "God, we were so far from this." "Yeah," I said, reaching for her hand. "But maybe we had to go through that to get here." She looked at me. I soughed. "Do you ever wonder if I'm still haunted by him?" I didn't lie. "Sometimes. But then I see you now, and I know you're not haunted. You're aware. There's a difference." She nodded, and for the first time, I saw her take that in without flinching. Later, after the dishes were washed and the lights dimmed, we sat on the couch, legs entwined, her head on my chest. She whispered, "I'm sorry for ever making you feel like second." I kissed her forehead. "I'm not angry anymore. Because you chose better. And this time, you meant it." There were no fireworks. No grand music playing in the background. Just the hum of the dishwasher, the rhythm of two hearts resting side by side, and the feeling that, for the first time, we weren't rebuilding on shaky ground. We were standing on something solid. Together. Equal.